Hey folks, David Stewart here. It's time to talk about some metal. I'm going to talk about this band right here, Dimhav or Dimhav. They're a Swedish metal band composed of 3 people, but it sounds like a lot more than 3 people. This album is really, really good. Right now, I've listened to it for a week. I would have talked about it earlier, but I've been out of town and been doing different things, so now I get to talk about it. And the more time I spend with this album, the more I like it, which is a very good sign. Right now, this to me is like metal album of the year, and honestly, I foresee this album being one of my favorite albums in the future. It is that good. It is an extremely well-made product, and I want to talk about it. I want to give you an analysis. A little bit about the band. They're from Sweden. 3 dudes, the Brothers Lindroth and Daniel Heiman on vocals. If you don't know who Daniel Heiman is, he's probably the best living metal vocalist, and he sounds great on this album. He absolutely sounds top-notch, and the instrumentals match that level of competency. They are great. There's only 3 guys on this. Sounds like there's a whole lot more because every single instrumental element sounds completely professional, sounds completely dedicated. It's very, very well done. So let me break down some of the categories here as we go. Before I get into the categories, let me describe a little bit about the genre that this is in. I can't really put this in a genre because there's so many mixtures here. It's a very eclectic album. There's power metal elements, prog metal, extreme metal, or folk metal. If I were to pick some bands that kind of sound like this, because this really does sound like its own thing, I would say Winter Sun. So if you're a fan of Winter Sun, there's going to be a lot on this album to enjoy. If you're a fan of Pagan's Mind, there's going to be a lot on this album to enjoy. And of course, if you're a fan of Lost Horizon, which Daniel Heiman famously sang in Lost Horizon, then you're probably going to like this album. But there's a whole lot more that's going on in there too. So please check it out. If you don't believe me, you can just go listen to it and see what's up. Let's start with production. So the production quality on this, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. I rarely give 10s on things. And I'm giving this a 10 out of 10, and I'm listening to the digital version. As far as I know, there's no vinyl version. There's not even a physical version that I saw that I could buy. They kind of shadow dropped this. I only knew about it because Daniel Heiman posted on social media, here's the new album from a band I've never heard of, with 3 dudes produced completely independently. I love that. The fact that it's 3 guys who just made this album is all the more impressive. It sounds like absolutely the top level of industry production and performance that's going on here. Every instrument's completely clear. In any given moment, you can hear every single instrument in the ensemble really clearly. And I think a lot of that has to do with the tonal arrangements they saw, say for the rhythm guitar sound, which can fill up a lot of space. That's very separated from the bass, the tone they sought for the bass, the way that they pan the guitar tracks, the way they pan the keyboard tracks, and where all the pitch levels are relative to the vocals, and the fact that Daniel Heiman really kind of sits on top of the mix and sits above the rather dense instrumental tracks really, really helps. The drums sound very alive. They sound really, really good. Very, very good balancing for all the pieces of the drum set. I never feel like I'm missing some detail in what the drums are doing as well. So it's absolutely top-notch production. I rarely give it 10 out of 10, but this one really, really deserves it. Likewise, it's not over-maximized, but there's moments where it sounds really loud, where they have that maximized, nuclear blast sound. Other times where the texture really thins out, it gets really quiet. You have a lot of reflective, quiet moments. There's a huge amount of variance in dynamics within songs, within moments, within the album as a whole. Absolutely great production. Next is performance. So performance, I'm also going to give this a 10 out of 10, and I almost never do that. But the performance is both the best that I could possibly imagine it being on every level, as well as just technically without flaws. If we start with the vocals, Daniel Heiman just sounds tremendous on this album. He's singing in his full range, both in terms of the power he's using, the volume, as well as the tone he's using. There's parts where he sings very quietly at the lower end of his register, and you can really hear a lot of details in his voice, like a close miking of his voice. And other times where he has those classic screaming high notes that are just unbelievably powerful and just right on pitch and perfect control of vibrato all around. Absolutely great performance by the master Daniel Heiman. But the instrumentals, they match that in every single moment. The first track, in fact, is basically instrumental. There's minimal amounts of vocals. There's not a lot of features for Daniel Heiman there, and that's a really kind of a big risk to take. They're going to open the album with a 10-minute instrumental track. But boy, it shreds top to bottom. The lead guitar on here is very, very good. There's a huge amount of variety. I never felt like the lead guitar was ever like phoning it in or anything. All the solos are memorable and original. Likewise, there's a lot of keyboard solos that are really good, and they're done by the same guy. Stefan Lindroth did all the keyboard leads and all of the guitars and bass. And the keyboard arrangements were done by the drummer, Ole. And Stefan also did this beautiful cover art. I love this. I love this cover art. It just really speaks to me, and it's a beautiful painting and really communicates the feeling of the album, I think, really, really well. So lead guitar is great. Drums are really on point. There's speed. There's subtlety at different parts. There's a lot going on. And then the keyboard work, the textural keyboard work really, really supports each mood in the song. It's very well composed, lots of variety in patches, lots of variety in the tones that they chose to use. And everything's just balanced out perfectly. There's never a dull moment. The performances are so impressive on this album. It's hard for me to say enough good things about it. Move on to composition. I mentioned variety, and I said this was an eclectic album. An eclectic album, there's a huge amount of compositional variety in this as well. Moments that are slow and reflective. There's these slow, plodding, almost doom-like sounds. Very heavy, very, very fast songs in there. Songs that really feature the melody very prominently. And there's not that many songs on it. I think there's only 7 songs. So just for instance, the Boreal Ascent, it's really a massive arrangement, and there's never a dull moment. And it's also arranged in a way that rather than having the way that you would traditionally arrange a song, which would be like verse, chorus, they really change up things. So you see repetitions, or you hear repetitions in places where you don't expect them, and you hear them repeated in ways you don't expect. Like you maybe hear an instrumental repetition of a vocal line in different parts. You have this great opening track called Boreal Ascent that really just blasts you in the face and ends with a tremendous amount of energy, fast and aggressive, but also has slow, reflective parts in it as well. Realms of a Vagrant King, you get this kind of plodding, heavy sound that really features the vocals heavily. I feel like by the time you get to this third track, The Flame Transcendent, you really are on kind of a journey. It's very reminiscent of something that would be heavily power metal, kind of like Winter Sun, but meets power metal. Great track. Chthonic Elegy, likewise, we slow it down a little bit. The Aerial is a very short instrumental track that really focuses on texture and mood before you get to those last couple of tracks, which have a lot of speed as well as really, really tight focus on vocal melody. So the composition, I'm also going to give that a 10 out of 10. I can't really imagine a metal album having a better set of compositions to round it out. Most of the songs on this album, by the way, are more than 9 minutes. They're all around 10 minutes, except for the Aerial, which is fairly short, a little instrumental interlude between the longer tracks. And those epic tracks really do feel epic. They don't feel like any part of it's drug out at all. The last one is General Effect. I'm going to give this General Effect a 10 out of 10. So yes, this album is getting 10s across the board. So if you want an example of what a 10 out of 10 album is for me, General Effect 10 out of 10. That means just how the album made me feel. It made me feel really inspired to produce more music. Made me feel really inspired to write and to just have all of these moods reflected in what I wanted to do artistically. And that's really rare that an album doesn't just enjoy it. I don't just enjoy it, but it actually inspires me to do my creative process as well. So 10 out of 10 General Effect. It absolutely blew me away from the first note. And I've listened to it a whole bunch of times since when it dropped, very surprisingly, last week. And now when I'm able to do this review for you guys, and I hope you will give it a chance and listen to it and let this band have some exposure. They're so good. I really haven't heard a product come out of the metal scene this good in quite some time, and it's really good to hear something on this level again. Something that just, if you want to hear what metal sounds like, metal. This album is metal. I really, really enjoy it, and I hope you will give it a listen. It's Dimhav by three Swedish dudes. Great job. Newest book, by the way, for me is City of Silver. It is out right now. And make sure you're on my mailing list, dbspress.com/list. just in case, I'm not around, and you will get a free book for doing that. So next book will come out in December 1st, and of course, you can get my music, zoolonline.com. So thanks so much, and I'll see you guys next time.